We have a lot packed into today's Take Note podcast for you. We're talking with Laurie Schell, who is a veteran arts education thought leader and advocate. And she's talking to us about a whole variety of things, including one of her new projects. That's all on today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this Take Note podcast. I am Mark Despotakis. Thanks for joining us. This is going to be a really great one for you today. I think this is a lot of news you can use type stuff, which is what we try to do. So as you can see, joining me on screen all the way from Tennessee is a friend and colleague that I've had the chance to know for, probably over 10 years, I'd say. Laurie Schell from Elevate Arts Ed. She is the founding principal there. But before that, she did a lot of work with Music Makes Us. I always get that. I always screw up the words, but Music Makes Us is right. From Nashville, which I think we could probably do a whole separate hour-long podcast on the work there, but we won't today. I will just tell you, go Google that and find out a lot of their wonderful work. And then before that, worked in California with the California Alliance for Arts Education. So she has a lot of history and work in the arts education space, has been a wonderful advocate, and really a thought leader in this area. So I'm so excited to chat with her today and have her share some things with you. Laurie, thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for asking me.
Absolutely. So I think we're gonna just cover the tip tops of several areas that I think Laurie can share some information with all of you about, and maybe help you think a little bit deeper about things that you can do in your program, in your district, and maybe kind of more holistically as far as the arts ed world. So the first area I want to talk about is strategic planning. Okay, so we hear about this, corporations do it, associations do it, PMEA, we're in the middle of our strategic planning process. Arguably, we all do it for ourselves in our personal lives in some way. But how does that actually relate to, what does that mean for arts educators? So you have a lot of experience in this area. So can you talk to us about strategic planning? What does it mean? What does it look like?
Be happy to. I want to start with a story. And in recent months, I was on a webinar that was sponsored by the NAM Foundation. And the guest speaker on the webinar was Cindy Martin, who is now the Deputy Commissioner for Education for the country. And she was formerly the superintendent of the San Diego Unified School District. And I had the pleasure of meeting with her and working with her when she was there. And she, when asked the question, how has San Diego been able to move arts education forward in such a consistent way? She said, because there's a strategic plan. Because the community and our school community got together, did the hard work, came to a consensus about what the strategic priorities were, and then how to implement it, how to fund it, how to implement it over time, what the accountability was, what was important, how it can be adjusted as need be, as budgets change. But that was music to my ears. Mm-hmm. When I was at the California Alliance for Arts Education, I co-wrote and co-edited a booklet called The Insider's Guide to Arts Education Planning. And it's a lot of districts have taken this up in California, and I've been able to facilitate the process in places outside of California. And what it is really is 4 basic steps, as you would find in any strategic planning process. review the current programs and assets, develop a vision for the future, identify the gaps in resources or program delivery or vision, and then articulate what the strategic goals and measurable outcomes are that you want to achieve in a 3 to 5 year time period. And if you don't have time to do the whole process, it's really helpful for a community to come together to at least chart out what the strategic direction is. And then, working backwards, as educators know how to do this, how to plan backwards, working backwards from those priorities. How do you put the implementation in place? So
you spoke to it a little bit, but I'm curious for you to talk a little more about, looking at that 30,000 foot level of, whatever it is, if it's statewide arts programming, it's your school district arts programming, it's your individual 4th grade band class. I'm curious, what is the value of stepping back and taking a look at that really big picture?
Well, you'll find that the theme of the conversation today is get on the balcony. We're all so involved in our day-to-day and just making everyday work, and we know how hard that is. But there is great value in getting in the balcony and stepping out, stepping off of the dance floor, to see the patterns that emerge, to see the relationships that emerge, to see what happens when you bring a community of people together. So one of the real benefits here is that community building piece. It's a great advocacy piece because you're actually bringing in community members. I would include nonprofit arts providers and corporate friends, people in the community who have a vested interest in this work. I would include teachers from every grade span, administrators in the district. I would include philanthropists in the area, decision makers, if you can get them, school board members. So it's a wonderful consensus building, affirming process where everybody's at the table and everybody walks away owning the plan.
Yeah, that part I think is incredibly crucial, because the more buy-in folks have, then the more, of course, invested they are and want to see a successful outcome.
Right.
That's important. So building off of that, arts educators really can find themselves in silos. Sometimes that is just based on the nature of their school district or school makeup. Sometimes that's just because the nature of the arts educator. Sometimes the band teacher can't go down to the faculty room for lunch, right? Because there's students coming down to practice in their room, and it's kind of as silly as that is, that's siloing in some way, but also siloed as far as staying in the education space. You mentioned nonprofits and the way that it's important to talk to those folks. So I'm curious, what is your take on the importance of these partnerships and how arts educators can say, okay, let's find a way to leverage some partnerships to I guess strengthen both sides of that partnership? Absolutely.
So let's think for a minute about internal partnerships and external partnerships. So if you're a teacher, a band director in a school, your internal partners are going to be your colleagues. Who's in the building with you? Who do you work with every day? Also, your colleagues in other schools who may have the same position as you. So a great place to start building partnerships, and we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute, is with, who's around you that you want to know more about, that you want to learn from, that you have something to share, something in common. External partnerships, as we mentioned, can be your nonprofit partners, in performing arts organizations, the symphony, the opera, the jazz performing group, whoever is out there doing the work that is supportive of what you are doing in your school. That's a potential partnership there. Also, music professionals. A lot of what I'm hearing is that students don't see the pathway. They don't see what's possible for them. They think if they can't be a star performer, then that there's nothing for them in the world of music. And we know that music professionals come in all shapes and sizes, and so much more so now with all the digital work that is happening in our field. So that's another great opportunity for partnerships. Who's a music professional in your community who you'd like to have come and talk to your kids? And let's talk about what is the hallmark? What are the hallmarks of a good partnership? I have 3 questions you should ask yourself. Does it build capacity for my program? Does it provide support for what's already there? And does it leverage visibility and advocacy opportunities? Can I use this opportunity to get the word out? Agree on what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you will serve the larger purpose. I think many partnerships are often short-sighted because they're seen as one-offs. But if you can work with partners to build a larger vision of what you want to accomplish, then they can occur year over year. You can bring in other partners to the table, the network can grow, and it all of a sudden becomes a great support resource for the educator in the classroom.
And you and I have both worked in a lot of coalition areas,
right.
And that's harder than it probably most people think. But it goes to the point I think that you're making here, that we're any partner you're going to bring in is going to come to the table with their set of expectations, their set of wants, and that's okay. But part of what the job of happening around the table then is, where are our agreeables? Where is that bigger vision that is valuable for all of us collectively, but then also strengthens us individually? If there's areas where there's major differences, well, then don't work together on that. I mean, it's kind of, it's simplistic when I say it, but the reality of it is complicated. But it's finding those shared things that are important. And in a school, boy, you have a lot of people that could be wonderful allies for you. Like I always say to the marching band director, whenever you're designing your show and you want some props done or something, go to the visual arts teachers and get their students involved. Go to the PR club. I mean, those are types of on the ground partnerships that I think are important too.
Absolutely. Yeah, find that sweet spot.
Exactly. Yeah, good way to put it.
Yeah, what is it that you're both passionate about? A good example of that from Nashville is our Disney Musicals in the Schools program that is offered by the Tennessee Performing Arts Center. And, it's Tennessee Performing Arts Center is, of course, a nonprofit, and they have school programs, outreach programs. And they have a program that they have grown over the years called Disney Musicals in the Schools. And what it is essentially is to offer children-sized Disney musicals for production. They bring in teaching artists. They work with the school's music teacher and art teacher and parents to put on a show. And it's so much greater than the sum of the parts.
Mhm.
What happens in those communities when you bring the community together like this for a show, whether it be a Disney show or any other kind of show, is that there's some community bonding that happens. There's advocacy that happens. Indeed, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we could go on for hours and just talk about examples that we've seen. So
Sure.
I just, it's for those of you out there who maybe aren't thinking in that way, look around and you'll see where schools are doing this, where other arts institutions in some way are doing these type of partnerships. So let's move on to another topic area here, advocacy. And it's a scary word to some people. For years, I've been trying to figure out what's a better word for it. I haven't figured that out just yet. But as we leave the pandemic, I think there's maybe a different set of advocacy strategies we might need to think about. But maybe I'm wrong in that. Maybe some of those strategies have always been valuable and they're just coming to light now. But in this, I guess the way to ask the question is, at this time, coming out of the pandemic, or really just because we're all at different levels of this pandemic, what are some advocacy thoughts that you would have for arts educators at, here we are in the middle of November 2021?
Right.
What are some takeaways for that?
Well, we're living through huge societal shifts, particularly around the nature of work. And the work in education is not immune to those shifts. We're seeing a lot of people leave the profession. We're seeing people who are coming into the profession demanding more support and more resources. Good for them. I hope they prevail. But what this really leads me to is a focus on self, a focus on our own individual self, a taking stock, if you will, a reflection, if you will. Now is the time to really think about what is important to me, and where am I going? I think that's where all advocacy starts, but perhaps now more than ever, it's going to take that individual reflection and commitment. Again, I would ask teachers to try to get in the balcony, to get a step away from their day-to-day. If you have to physically go on a walk and just let your thoughts go, I would encourage that. Any kind of thinking, reflecting time, I think is really valuable right now. And I would ask yourself the question, a deceptively simple question: what is going on? What is going on that either supports or inhibits my goals? It could be professional goals, it could be personal goals. But think about it. Make a list in your head. You don't have to write it down. But what is going on in my life right now? I mean, you could have, on the plus side, on the support side, you could have engaging administration. You could have, excited students. You could have, wonderful things in your family, getting in touch with people you haven't seen in years. There could be some wonderful things on the support side. On the inhibit side, you might be in a period of declining enrollment in your programs. You might have challenging schedules where they're trying to cram more and more and more into less and less time. You might have family issues that are challenging. So I would encourage you to take a moment to do this. Be honest with yourself, and also be kind. Be kind. It's tough. It's a tough time. And then after you do that for yourself, I would do it with a couple of colleagues. Ask the same question with your colleagues. with the people that you work with the people that you live with. What is going on? And listen really hard to what people are saying, and listen for the words that pop up over and over and over again. What are you hearing, and what is that telling you? So by starting with that simple question, that could lead to a whole reframing of what your goals are. If you're worried about declining enrollment, if you're worried that the schedules are going to to just take the oomph out of your advanced courses, then create a goal. Again, don't do this alone. Create a goal with your colleagues where the goal is increased participation in music in my school. That's a great goal. And then work backwards from there. Okay, how am I going to do that? Again, it does start with the self. It starts with a leap of faith. It starts with a leap of hope that we can actually have some control over what's happening.
So far today, I love these. The two takeaways that I have here are the balcony and work backwards. And this is stuff that especially music educators are doing all the time with their program. So now it's just taking, what you're saying here is just taking it and reframing that and putting that in another context. Because when you work on your concert, you're thinking of what the audience sitting in the balcony is going to hear. Right. When you're preparing your concert, you're working backwards so that you will be prepared for the concert. So there's so many other ways to do it. And partnering with people, of course, is important, because when you put on a concert, you're all partnering together, everyone on that stage.
That's right.
So wise words. I love it.
Well, and it's, getting on the podium and getting ready for the downbeat. You're in the balcony because you can see everybody and hear everybody and feel what's going on behind you. So yes, hopefully people can relate to that.
Yeah, just change the context. So, okay, let's move to another topic here. We're jumping around to as much as we can. Okay, so you're starting a project with Creative Generation. So we're going to talk about the project in a second, but can you tell us a little about what Creative Generation is first?
Creative Generation was founded in 2017, or 19. It's fairly recent. It's a new project.
It's the pandemic. None of us know what day of year it is, so you're good.
Yeah, I can't. I really have lost a couple of years.
Yeah.
So anyway, Jeff Poulin founded Creative Generation, and it is a capacity building organization that's dedicated to inspiring and catalyzing the work of young creatives, which is very cool and very broad. They have a new and different structural capacity to reach out to people working in the creative world throughout the world. They're partnering with folks at the World Alliance for Arts Education. They're partnering with the Boys and Girls Clubs here in the US. Their work is broad and encompasses creatives rather than, again, siloing. These are the educators. These are the folks who make the art. This is the audience. But to put it all under this umbrella of creative capacity is wonderful. And the fact that they've encouraged and asked me to join them means that it's not just about young people. I'm happy to be working with a group that is many decades younger than I am. But it's really about envisioning what's possible and what's out there. So we are co-creating this project called the Making the Case for Culture, Education, and Justice. pretty big name.
Big, yeah,
Big,
and big areas there, yeah.
yeah, right. And so the project is really to expand the knowledge base of what advocacy can be, and case making in the arts. And by case making, I'm talking about, not why we do the arts, not the value, the benefits part, but about how we make the case for the arts. I mean, Mark, you and I have been around long enough that we've seen lots of taglines for case making. The arts, it's the law. The arts, it makes kids smarter.
Right.
The art, I mean, we could go on and on with those taglines and ways of reaching different audiences. So what I'm doing, and doing this with Creative Generation, is to create a overview of literature, to do a deep dive into the research that's out there from lots of different sectors about case making, from the housing sector, from the financial sector, from Black Lives Matter, from the social justice sector. So how are those groups working to advance their cause? How are they making the case? So a deep bibliography, an annotated bibliography, will become available. And then I've written, and they're in the final stages of edit, a suite of articles that breaks down and highlights the key learnings from all of that research that is out there. So what's important for our field? So again, bringing it back to our field, and our field is education writ large, not just in the schools, but in our communities. It's really about creative learning. And finally, the final piece of that will be a curriculum that we can take around to folks who are interested in looking at advocacy in a slightly different way. And like you, I've struggled using that word because at workshops, it seems that people see that in the title, they go, oh, no, not for me.
Right.
But I've embraced my inner nerd and my need to call advocacy what it is. And really, it's about advancing our ideas and advancing our hopes for what every child will have.
I think doing a project like this at Creative Generation makes a lot of sense, because rewind here 3 minutes where you talk about Creative Generation, and it's not just about the arts classroom. We talked a lot about silos today, but when we advocate, we have siloed for ever, maybe, at least in the arts space, because to your point about, the catchphrases, making music makes you smarter. We all had the stickers that said that. Well, if we're going to make that argument, well, visual arts probably does it too, and is it only about a scholastic outcome? Is it not about a whole societal value in it? So I think Creative Generation is the absolute right place for this type of project. And you're saying, let's look where it's been successful completely outside of our bubble. Right. So smart.
Well, it's fascinating. I mean, I spent several weeks or months really looking at different research studies and what's out there, and how people are doing this work. And from stories about how Nelson Mandela did what he did in South Africa. It's like some of the same principles here we can really learn from. So it's exciting. It's it paints a very big picture.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. What do you know when this will start becoming available?
Hopefully soon.
Okay, great.
Hopefully, the written pieces will be available within the next month or so.
Okay.
I'd like to say, and the curriculum shortly thereafter. I think we're actually looking for 3 or 4 places to do a pilot this curriculum. So if anybody is interested, or Mark, if you know of anyone, let us know if you might like to be a pilot.
Absolutely. And I guarantee you this much, we're going to have a follow-up conversation on this as it's released, and once the field gets to see it, and once you've maybe piloted a little bit, to see where this goes, because I do think that this could be one of those pivotal moments of, yeah, let's rethink this, and this might be that point to help us rethink it. So thank you for doing that work.
Oh, yes, my pleasure. It really keeps me quite engaged. So.
Good. Well, I will direct folks to elevateartsed.org if you want to see some of Laurie's writings and learn a little bit more about her. Laurie, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today.
Absolutely. It's been a real pleasure. I hope it is useful for your audience. And I look forward to hearing what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Absolutely. We will certainly stay in touch. I miss seeing you in person. Normally we see each other in sunny California, but that hasn't happened for a while. But I look forward to seeing you in person again soon.
Great.
So again, thank you, Laurie, for joining us, and thank all of you for joining us on today's PMEA's Take Note podcast, presented by the Slippery Rock University Music Department. We'll see you next time.